Okay, I've got with me now Augusto from Zagame. My brain's having a bit of a meltdown here. And once again, thank you very much, Augusto, for your sponsorship of our event. And we hope that we can get some people along to buy some cars from you, and obviously that's what it's all about. But not only have we got a few Fiats here, we've got some wonderful other cars. Tell us what you've got today.
Today we've got the brand new Lamborghini Huracan Spider. It's just been released. So this is actually the first one registered in Australia. We're lucky enough to have it here. We're actually using it for the press. Then we've got the just newly launched Alfa Romeo 4C Spider next to it. We've got Bobby Zagame's personal little old Fiat 500, which he's very proud of. Then we've got the brand new, just launched Ferrari 488 Coupe GTB. We have the Maserati Ghibli and the 500X as well.
So how long's Bobby had the old 500?
He's only had it for about probably about 3-4 years. He won't let it go. He'll definitely sell all the other cars we've got here, but definitely not that one.
So how often does he actually drive it?
I don't think he ever has.
Well, he must get out in it. So with Fiat and Zagame's, I have read that sales aren't quite so good at the moment. What are they doing to try and kick things along a bit?
Look, we're in a transition phase at the moment. we're going to relocate in the next couple of months to a brand new showroom. So not many people know about this, but a couple of doors down. If you guys come down to Sponsor in Richmond, you'll see our showroom, and to the right of it, we're renovating a completely brand new showroom, and we'll be the first dedicated Alfa Romeo showroom in Australia. Downstairs and upstairs we'll have Fiat. In anticipation of the new Giulia, will be January next year.
Actually, the new Giulia sounds like it's going to be a pretty sensational car, especially the top spec model. What do you know about it?
Well, I've seen it in the flesh twice last year at launch, and then again in Las Vegas. Look, the car's wonderful. The pictures are beautiful, but if you see it in the flesh, it's incredible. We've got about 8-9 orders already on the QV. Nothing on the competitors can't keep up with it. It's a very quick car.
So with the low spec car, I guess, what sort of price will that be as opposed to the QV?
We don't know the exact pricing, but what they're telling us, if you look at a BMW 3 Series, basically it'll be priced very equivalent to that.
Well, we've all got high hopes for that car because it certainly looks pretty sensational. And you've driven the new the 4C Spider. How does it compare to the coupe?
It's very similar. Very similar. The cockpits are very obviously the same, so it's very similar.
Well, you better tell us about the Lamborghini Aventador, if I pronounced that right.
We don't have an Aventador here, but the reason.
Huracan.
Well, the Huracan that we've got here, the new Spider. So basically, it's all-wheel drive. It's just been released. They had the dealer launch a couple of months ago in Miami, and beautiful green. Lamborghini can get away with painting their cars these different colours, very loud colours, and we're very proud to display it here today.
Thanks, Augusto.
No worries.
And thanks again for sponsoring the Fiat Club this year. And let's hope that we can push the business your way, especially with the new Alfa and the Fiat. Thanks, Augusto. Sure. Okay, we're doing another interview now with Paul Scambler, who has the wonderful 131 Mirafiori, Abarth, a few other things, rally car. Paul has been unbelievable in doing this car. It's a pretty much identical replica. How long have you been working on this project, Paul?
It took 10 years to build, and coming from New Zealand as a 131 two-door Sport.
So before this, you had another one, was a four-door that you tried to look like a two-door, didn't you? So you thought you'd like to do the real thing.
Yeah, I had an opportunity after buying the cylinder head that I thought I'd start again and actually buy a two-door shell and just do it properly right the first time.
Well, I always say that when you got a cylinder head, you might as well go and build a whole car.
Yeah, it was a bit like that. I I always called it an inside-out build. So you started with the cylinder head, and then you got all the other components to go with it, and that included the body shell.
So sourcing all these parts, that must have been pretty difficult.
Well, my friend Google was very helpful. He's a nice bloke, and he tracked down a lot of different manufacturers of reconditioned parts and second-hand shops that were restoring or building these in Europe. So I was lucky enough to get a host of contacts, and obviously as the later technology gets better and things like 3D CAD and mill machines that will actually make you a part, etc. It's actually become more common now to try and find the missing bits that you probably couldn't get 10 years ago.
But hang on, Mr. Google doesn't pay tax, isn't that a problem?
Not to me.
So out of all the bits you get were suspension bits and uprights and that, some of the more difficult things to get?
Yeah, the actual car is actually running complete genuine running gear on it. So the independent rear end is off an ex-rally car. The rear hub's off an ex-rally car. The cylinder head is off an ex-Group 4 rally car. The remanufactured parts are the dry sump and the sump itself. The Killington injection, which is not actually on the car just yet. The hardest part I actually had trouble finding was actually the front hubs. Fiat were very notorious around taking parts out of other cars and transfer them into something else, and particularly around their race cars. But the actual 131 hub for the Abarth is actually a unique item. It was only ever built and made for the 131 Abarth.
Well, that wasn't very helpful of them, was it?
No, it wasn't, but I did get onto a guy in Germany who said he had 4 brand new on the shelf that had never been used. So I was lucky enough to get them. Unfortunately, I lost an arm in doing it, but it's come back, so that's all right. But they are not sort of cheap things to build.
Are you talking about your own arm or the arm for a car?
My own arm.
Arm and a leg.
Exactly.
Now, you've done a few track days in it. Are you going to really give it the full squirt yet?
Not quite, no. I think from my point of view, it seems that the cylinder head in the early model 16 valves, they actually run quite small porting, even though it's been worked, this one. And I think it's not getting the air through the carbs at the moment. So it sounds good, it runs good, but there's still about another 20 horsepower or so to be found somewhere in the conversion of the injection.
But I would say that someone who spends so much time and money on a car like this, that the first time you took it out on the track, you must have felt a bit nervous.
I feel nervous every time I drive it. Even come down today, I felt nervous. The thing is, probably the first true race car I've had, and race cars tend to need a lot of work even before you get to the day. So it's like you've almost got to plan 2 weeks in advance when you're doing an event, whether it's the oil you've got to change, and unfortunately there's no sump plug on this thing, so you've got to take brackets out and hoses off to get all the oil out of the tank, and then spark plugs have a tendency to foul up because running on the carbs, it's running very rich on the very low end of the throttle, so spark plugs tend to foul up. I did feel relieved, and I was panicking in Sandown June last year, when I actually felt that it was going to be a terrible day, and as it turned out, it ran beautifully all day. I think the car was actually, and the way it was carburetted at the time, was to run off the idle jets and make sure that you were in that 3,000 RPM range above, and therefore the spark plugs stay clean and it was easy to start and so forth. It's when you're actually driving around like an event like today, it's a real hassle because it's just a lot of idle jets, plugs get fouled up, and it sort of runs a bit too rich.
Now, these cars were actually a rally car rather than a track car, so do you plan to do any rallies in it?
The suspension actually has been set up more for tarmac rallying, so I think that's sort of something I'd like to try and do at some point. It's not a bigger priority at the moment. I want to get the car sort of a bit more sorted out before I was to tackle something like that, but you certainly do notice that when you do get onto a proper racetrack, that the car is actually more designed for rallying, and it's got the torque and the right range. It feels much more at home in a very tight, twisty hill range than it would do on a flat-out open circuit, and that's because the suspension is really designed to handle the travel up and down, etc. It's got longer struts in the rear, which is what Abarth did as well. So there's those little things that you've got to tweak, and I guess it gets to a point where you've got to make a decision that do you stick with it for track days and get the suspension maybe a little bit further down in height, so it's cornering a bit better, or do you stick where it is and say, well, that's where its maximum is, and it's more designed for then a tarmac rally?
Well, I guess it's with a lot of race cars and also cars that are driven on the road, there's always some compromise.
Correct. And, my ultimate goal here was to keep the car as original as possible. So I will try and tweak the suspension a little bit to give me a bit more play between tarmac spec and race spec, and that should be the best compromise I'm going to get.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Paul. It's a pretty wonderful car, and we had a really good look at it about 6 months ago on a hoist. The club had a day, and so come have a look at Paul's car. It's pretty nice. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay, I've got Peter Rumpf with me at the moment, who has this wonderful, I'm going to say 525, am I correct?
Yes, you are.
There you go, I know more about Fiats than I thought I did. So how long have you had the car, Peter?
Since 1987.
1987, and what was it like when you got it?
Oh, it was an absolute wreck. It was in a scrap metal yard in Tailem Bend in South Australia.
Well, I can tell you now, it is magnificent. So, do you know anything about the history of the car?
It spent its life in Meningie down in South Australia on a rural property, I believe.
Yeah.
According to the old guy that ran the scrap metal yard.
And of the work you has done to the car, how much of that have you done yourself?
Initially, it was a project with Augustin Banco, and we restored parts for 3 cars.
Okay.
That was the idea of the project initially. Yeah.
Well, we all know Augustine and the wonderful work that he does.
So when I had the rolling chassis, it then went to Antique Auto Works in Thomastown for the bodywork.
Okay. I'm not too sure, but I think in one of my trips to Italy, when I went to the Fiat Museum, I'm pretty sure there's one in the museum there. And if I remember rightly, it was owned by one of the popes. Does that ring a bell with you or not?
Yes, the Pope was given a 525S sedan as a gift from the Fiat company, but the SS is a sports car with the wire wheels, but my car originally was a 525S.
Yeah, because I remember looking at the car, and it certainly had different wheels to yours, but the rest of the car looked pretty similar. And I must admit, I was pretty impressed at this time. And looking at your car now, I'm mildly impressed. And how many times have you had it out now?
Infrequently, and I want to drive it more.
Well, that's really good. I tell you what, we're mildly impressed, and hope you do well today in the concourse.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay, we've now got Harry with us, who has just acquired himself one of the brand new Abarth 500 Biposto 695. They keep changing their numbers, don't they? Anyway, the Biposto is sort of a road legal race car. And Harry's had he had an Abarth before. And what other Fiats have you had, Harry?
I've had a X19, 128, and that's it in the Fiat range.
It's been a long time between drinks, Harry.
A very long time.
Anyway, Harry's been on our 6-hour relay team a few times. And what car was that, Harry?
With my Renault R26.
Oh, we won't mention that. Anyway, we'll talk about the Biposto. So, having had an Abarth 500, with not many miles on it, what inspired you to go one step more?
Craziness. Fiat craziness, I think. Yeah. No, I was just having a look at maybe a new track day car, and this came up, and opportunity knocks, as they say.
So, the performance between the two, what sort of things are really different?
The power delivery, the handling, the setup, the brakes, pretty much everything. As this is a road-going race car from the Assetto Corsa.
So take a so let's take, say, Phillip Island, for example. How many seconds quicker do you reckon to be around there?
I have no idea, but I'll know soon enough.
Well, we're really looking forward to that, Harry. And how does the dog like it?
The pardon?
Your dog, how does he like the car?
Well, he sat in the front. He wasn't impressed.
The dog wasn't impressed, but everyone else is. Thanks, Harry. Okay, everybody, we've got another car here we're going to talk about. I'm with second name?
Norman Faulkner.
Right, so I'm with Norman Faulkner, and he's got a car that I've had a little bit of passion about over the years. It's a Stanguellini Formula Junior. The cars were basically built around Fiat 1100s. That's true, isn't it?
Yep.
And I've actually been to the Stanguellini museum a couple of times in Modena, and it's really well worth a visit. Anyway, Norm, tell us a bit about how long you had the car and what your passion for Stanguellini is.
Right. I
Put it up really close.
yeah, I remember the Stanguellinis back in the in period, because that's how old I am.
Close here. Really close.
And when I decided to buy one, which was in the mid-2010, I bought this one out of Chicago 2007, and we brought it back to Australia in pretty ordinary shape, supposedly going to be able to be raced, but one of the front wheel bearings only had 2 balls in it, and we had to then commence a complete restoration. And since then I've raced it in South Africa, taken it to New Zealand a few times. It'll be back here again this time next year, and that's pretty much its history. It's a lot of fun to drive. It's a Formula Junior, as you probably know, and that was an Italian Formula Junior, which was created to try and get the Italian drivers up to driving their Formula One cars, as most of the cars then were driven by foreigners. And then it was such a popular formula in Italy, they then turned it into an international formula, and the front engine cars, the Stanguellinis and a few other various makes, mainly out of Italy, were completely blown away by the rear engine Brabhams and Lotuses and Lolas and things. So if you look at a 1960 Lotus 18 compared with this as a 1959 car, it looks like about 20 years difference between the two.
But Stanguellini itself has got quite a history. Can you tell us a bit about the actual company Stanguellini?
Stanguellini were the Fiat concessionaires in Modena, which of course very close to Maserati and Ferrari, and Fangio actually drove the prototype of the Formula Junior for Stanguellini, and it was a very, very incestuous little group in Modena, and the designer of this is supposed to have designed the bodywork for the 250 250F Maserati. But Stanguellini were very well known in Italy, not here in Australia, for their Mille Milles and Targa Florias and even Le Mans, and even a land speed record they set.
Now, when I went to the Stanguellini factory, they had a, I can't remember which model Fiat it was, but it was one of the really, really early ones. And it's actually been in the family the whole time since it's brand new. Have you seen that car?
I've seen it, but I'm not sure which one. 501 or something.
Oh, it was early in the 501. It was like 1905 or 05 or something like that. To see this car amongst all the red racing Stanguellinis was I don't know, looked quite odd. And then round the back, tell us what was round the back of the Stanguellini race cars.
Oh, it was a whole different collection of cars. They've got various Stanguellinis, there's Ferraris and a few other cars they collect. I've been to the museum 3 times, and they do have a slight changing lot of cars behind the scenes, but their Stanguellinis in the museum itself seem to remain pretty constant.
Now, after the Formula Juniors became superseded, what happened to Stanguellini as a race car manufacturer?
Well, they tried to compete with the rear engine. They did build a car called a Delfino, which they built about 6 rear engine Stanguellinis, which were not competitive with the English cars. And then they did do a deal sometime just before the oil crisis hit with Momo Corp in America to build an Italian car with an American motor, but the fuel crisis put an end to that, and that was their last dalliance in making any sort of automotive cars.
Anyway, if you happen to go to Modena, you can actually go and have a look at the Stanguellini Museum. It was behind a Fiat dealership, but we're not too sure what's happened to that. We don't think it's there anymore. Maybe they moved, but the museum is still there, and you can go down there and have a look at it. And if you're lucky, a little chap that looks after it, which I think has worked for Stanguellini for nearly all his life.
No, he's retired.
He's retired, has he? Well, when I was there a few years ago, I think he'd been a mechanic there, and he's been there the whole of his life, and he might even take you down the back to show you where they do the restorations. Thanks, Norm. It's wonderful to see a car like this here today.
Right, thank you.